The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Delaney, 4 or 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did the $400 million actually sit in an account segregated at a separate financial institution, or was it just held by the United States government?
The $400 million is in what is called the FMS trust fund that sits in the Treasury. All FMS customers pay funds into there, and then they are separated through separate holding accounts for each customer.
But is it kind of fungible cash, or is it actually segregated in a separate account? I mean, when you say it's held at the Treasury, does that mean it's effectively fungible with all the cash of the United States and it's just tracked as a separate account, or is there actually somewhere the equivalent of a bank account at a large financial institution where there's a statement that says there's $400 million of cash sitting in there?
I believe my colleagues at the Treasury could maybe speak to this more, but my understanding is that it is an account within the U.S. Treasury. Okay.
So it seems like what effectively happened in the middle of 2015 is three things came together simultaneously: the Iran nuclear agreement, the prisoner exchange swap, and then the settlement of this claim. Is that the right way of thinking about it? Three separate transactions or three separate agreements were reached by three separate teams?
Congressman, that's correct. We sought to finalize all of those issues on the same or on around the same time to take advantage of the diplomatic momentum we have.
So as it relates to this claim, is it fair to say that a legal obligation of the United States of America was created in mid-2015 to pay $1.7 billion?
I wouldn't put it exactly that way. These are matters that were under litigation for many years, and members of the legal advisor's office at the State Department had been litigating these FMS claims for a long time.
But I'm talking about, forget about all the history. In the middle of 2015, you said this was settled.
It wasn't settled. What we were facing was we were approaching a hearing date.
Right.
And Iran wanted to move to, it's like going to trial, and they wanted to have this decision not only go to hearing and heard by the tribunal, but decided in a preliminary matter.
And what interest rate were they claiming was owed across the period of time?
Iran was claiming very, very high interest rates.
What rate?
This is an area that I would prefer not to get into in this
It looks like we settled at a slightly higher than a 4% interest rate. Is that right?
I don't know exactly what that translates into. There was certainly a methodology behind that, and I'd be happy to go through that in a closed setting.
Right. And do you know what the average interest rate, Treasury rate across the period of time was?
I do know that in the early 1970s and 1980s, the interest rates were around 18, 19, 20%.
Right, they were high. I mean, and I haven't done the exact math, but just looking at the chart, it looks like the average Fed rate across the period of time was about 8%, and you settled for about 4%. And the power of compounding is such that at 8%, it would have been $8 or $9 billion, and at 4%, it was $1.3 billion. So that's the bargain you thought you negotiated. Is that correct?
We agreed to the disposition and a compromise on interest.
That's right. And so was it actually a legal obligation, would you say? I mean, you say you agreed and you settled, but was there any kind of formal agreement that was reached where somewhere in the books of the United States of America we entered a $1.7 billion liability?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but we certainly...
So if someone would have asked the government in the fall of 2015, how much do we owe Iran? Would they have said $1.7 billion, or would they have said $400 million?
Again, this is, as was referred to by one of your colleagues, this is a matter of litigation risk, and these are the kinds of issues we look at like any litigating parties when you're actively litigating claims. And we could discuss that, some of that litigation risk in a closed setting.
So I guess the question, was this settled in mid-2015, or was it still open-ended?
In mid-2015, we were discussing this with Iran, and there was some urgency because we felt that this was going to go to hearing and then a decision by the tribunal.
Were you still discussing it in September of 2015?
Yes.
And December of 2015?
Yes. Iran filed its hearing proposal in November of 2015.
What day do we think we actually agreed to the $1.7 billion? Like that number?
Are you speaking to the United States or to Iran?
Yeah, to the United. When do we feel like we had an agreement with them as to $1.7 billion?
Again, I think it would be better to discuss those details in a closed setting.
Because that date is relevant as to whether this was an obligation of the government or something else. And but I assume what you're saying here today is that that agreement for $1.7 billion was reached before the payment was made.
That is correct.
How much in advance of the payment, would you say?
Again, on issues of timing, we certainly had agreed with Iran sometime before the payment was made. I wasn't involved in all the details.
Does sometime mean more than 30 days, or more than 60 days, or more than 90 days?
It was less than 30 days.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair